Bum, 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 bum. Now you can hear me. Sorry about that. So hopefully now you should be able to hear me. So if you haven't, then I might as well just go back to the beginning. Lovely job. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Ariana and HM Lee, for letting me know. And sorry if I've mispronounced your names. But basically, we're covering this. We're covering the art of being a standout guest. Now, we've got a half-hour presentation. Which is basically 5 different sections of my online course. And because we've got the online course, which is all about this, it's available on Udemy and different places. I picked 5 different sections. And those 5 different sections are crafting the perfect pitch, power of preparation, deliver value, not a sales pitch, art of storytelling, and how to spread the word. So we're going to be covering those 5 topics. Now, in this course, there's loads of different topics, but if you've got any questions after this presentation, I kind of go through a few of these points, I would love to know. I will answer your questions. So if you've got any questions at any time, put them in the comments below wherever you are watching. So let's crack in with crafting the perfect pitch. So when it comes to crafting the perfect pitch, this really is your ticket to securing a great podcast guest appearance. Sending generic requests just won't cut it nowadays, because the host of the show wants to know that you're a great fit for their audience. So here's a few ideas how to kind of do it. Now, I'm going to be covering each point in literally 3 or 4 minutes, but please check more information out, and I'll put further links at the end. First off, you should really start to personalize each pitch. So generic one, as I said before, doesn't cut it. So personalize it. Address the host by name, mention a specific episode or topic that you've enjoyed. This means that you would have to listen to a previous episode, because frankly, this shows you that you've done your homework. And also the host will know that you're serious about being on to their podcast. So listen to the episode first, and then you can personalize the pitch with what your favorite episode was, what topic you enjoyed, what guest you enjoyed. It really does help if you personalize the pitch. Then lead with value. You can explain what you bring to the table and how your insights, experiences, and stories will benefit their audience. Remember, you are in such a privileged position being a guest on a podcast, because that host basically is trusting you to share your insights with their audience. So really what you want to do is you want to make sure that you lead with value every single time. You don't have to do the hard sell, because if they like your stuff, if they like the way you're delivering, then guess what? They're more likely to work with you anyway. So lead with value. Please also keep it concise. Podcast hosts are busy people. You know, they're organizing interviews, they're doing interviews, then they're marketing it, or they're passing it on to someone else to do it, but hosts are busy. So get to the point quickly. How will your insights, experiences make you the best value for their audience, but also make you and demonstrate your ability to be an expert in your field? If you can showcase that in a couple of sentences, in a couple of minutes, a minute of video, do it. But you've got to showcase you've got to keep it concise. They are busy people. Get to the point. Also, it's a good idea to showcase your credibility. Now, this could be including links to previous episodes, articles, basically anything that social proofs and demonstrates your authority in your field. It could be an idea to have it on a 1-page kind of sheet, which means that you can send to them. Think of it as your podcast CV with your main topics, your key messages, and anything else that you want to kind of showcase. That could be a good idea to have a 1-pager. And there's a whole section in the course all about that. But in this case, showcase your credibility, include links to past interviews, make it easy for them to listen to them by having a page on your website. Just make sure that you have got all your good stuff all in one place that you can send to them. Next up, you can always suggest engaging topics that you two can talk about. So offer 2 to 3 potential discussion points that aligns with the podcast themes. I'm going to repeat that. It must align to the podcast themes. This is why a generic request won't work. Because first of all, you have to listen to the show, you have to lead with value, you have to make sure that you've actually got everything in one place, and then you've got topics that are suitable for that particular show. Really important. But you want to make it easy for the host to see how you fit in. That's all you want to do. And by suggesting engaging topics, it could be great. You can also link those engaging topics with some of the other speakers that they've had on their show as well. If you've got a podcast or webinar or speaking clips, again, share them. You want to highlight your speaking style, because your speaking style might not match their speaking style. And if so, and it doesn't fit, fine. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that you need to highlight your speaking style. And again, you want to make sure that you're getting across to the host that you're engaging, that you're articulate, and you know your stuff. So highlight your speaking style through those. There's a few more that I've got here as well. But ideally, you just want to make sure you're making it easy for them to say yes. You know, that's all you want to do. By providing those links, providing those details, providing when you're available to attend an interview, or preferred recording format, or just any supporting stuff you can send to them, headshots, details of links that they can check out. You want to make it easy for them to say yes. And then at the end of the day, if we don't answer because they are busy folks, then why don't you just follow up with a quick, hi, how you getting on? It doesn't have to be a warm place, but a quick message. Just say, hey, it's all good. But that's some cool information that's going to help you create a perfect pitch to you, first of all, to get onto podcasts. To do that, that's your kind of part. The next part is you've been accepted onto the podcast. So you've identified the right podcast because you've listened to them, and then you've created a pitch that you've sent to the people, to the podcast host. Now what you want to do is you want to create a one-page success plan, which I should really skip to the next one. There you go. So you want to do one of these bad boys. Now, this means that you've got all your information about that episode, about that podcast appearance, all in one place. Think of it as a pre-interview document. That means that actually, on the day, you've got every little bit sorted. So these are some of the bits that you need to put in to your one-page success plan. Because funny enough, good podcast appearances don't happen by chance. It is a result of solid preparation. Even if it might not look it, there's been hours of preparation going into every solid interview. So this is some of the stuff that you should cover in your one-page success plan. And you need to do this, ideally, for every single podcast episode that you go on, because every podcast will be different. Some of these points you can cross over, sure. But ideally, you should have a separate one for each one. So first of all, you should have the podcast overview. So write down the show's name, the host, the audience profiles, the formats, any questions that they might ask you, anything like that, just so you've got it all in one place. And once you've got that, you go on to point 2, which is the key talking points. Ideally, identify 3 to 5 main ideas that you want to communicate during your conversation. Remember, keep them clear and concise. Maybe also, if you know what questions are coming up, you can also have 1 or 2 personal stories or examples that you could just say off the top of your head. Jot down relevant anecdotes. Basically, you want people to understand your information through stories. If you've got a story about a particular particular key talking point, pop that down there. And it might just be tell podcasting starting story, but at least then you've got it to prompt. Also on this one pager, you can also put about the host background and style. So you've got a few kind of key things that you can kind of bounce off. But also this is a chance for you to research their previous episodes and maybe mark down a few key talking points that they've done before. You can understand their question style, their approach, and also their preferred topics as well. And these could just literally be just one line that has key points on there. You can also, as I said before, note any common questions, have your call to action already on there. So if someone says, so how can people get in touch with you? You can say, actually, they can follow us on LinkedIn. They can subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter where I'll give a daily information, daily idea around podcasting. Whatever it is, you've got your call to action. straight away, wrote down, so it's all there. So you don't have to worry about it. On the other side of it, you could have your technical checklist. So what you need to make sure you do before you go live to make sure it works, such as check the microphone works before you get going. Stuff like that. You want to make sure you've got a technical list, that you've got a checklist that, frankly, you know you can just run through on the day. So for me, if I was doing one for this, it would be making sure the microphone works and I've got the presentation all loaded up. I did half of that. It would be to make sure that I'm physically prepared. I've got a glass of water next to me, just in case my throat dries up. My setting is fine. The studio that I've got is all on the right brand, and I know what I'm talking about. That's a nice, clear technical checklist that I know that it's going to work. I also know that I've taken my dogs out for a walk. I've given them a dog tea. I don't want to say the word because they will come running, but I've given them some tweet. So therefore, I know they're all sorted now. I made sure that I was prepared for this event. And all of that bit would go onto the technical checklist on my checklist to do before. Also on this, you'll note down the episode date, the promo plan, so you know what you need to do and check it up. And also have, if you're a note person, have your backup notes. Now, that's just some of the stuff you can include on the one sheet. There's loads more, but basically you want to do this for every single podcast appearance you make. And as you can see, some of them will cross over, but also some of them will have to be for that particular one. Next up, you want to deliver value, not a sales pitch. Nobody likes a person who goes onto a podcast and just sells. Nobody needs that. Nobody wants that. And a host definitely doesn't want that. And you just don't want to listen to it. So don't do it. It's all about delivering value. It is. Now, that is the most important thing. And if you take anything out of this, take this. Because it's really important to remember that the audience is there to hear valuable insights, not a hard sell. It really isn't about a hard sell. And you can do that in a number of different ways. But here's how to avoid turning a podcast appearance into a sales pitch. Now, good right from the bat, start with sharing knowledge and insights. Offer really good, insightful ways and useful and actionable advice that they can start doing straight away. Now, with all this stuff I'm doing, I want to make sure that all the stuff you can do straight away. So the one pager you can do straight away. Crafting your perfect pitch, you can do straight away. Making sure that you've delivered value, you can start doing straight away. You can start by sharing knowledge and insights by creating your key message that you want to share out. The next bit is all about telling stories, not sales. Remember what I said about in the previous slide? It's all about telling stories. People buy stories. Storytelling is the oldest form of communication. So you want to try to tell as many stories. So instead of promoting your product, share relevant personal stories or experiences that are going to help the audience. It's nice and straightforward when you say it like that, but you've got to have the stories in the back of your mind ready to shout out. Because it's really easy to go into default selling mode if you're not prepared. But let's say if you're selling the book on a podcast, you don't want to just keep referencing your book. The best way that you can sell your book on a podcast is for the host to buy into the book and for the host to sell it. You don't need to sell it. The host will do it. But you need to tell your stories, your experiences, and your insights. You've also got to be authentic as well. You've got to be yourself. There's no point trying to be stuffy and know-it-all if you're not like that. There's no point using fancy words if fancy words aren't the way that you communicate normally. Be authentic. Be yourself. And also, it's good to be rehearsed, but don't be too rehearsed. You don't want to feel like you're just in a monologue. You want it to be a kind of a proper two-way conversation if you can. It's harder to do it in this format, but in a podcast as a podcast guest, if you're bouncing back and forth with a host, that is some of the best interviews you'll ever hear, is when actually both of them are in sync. So be authentic, don't over rehearse. Make it a two-way conversation. Ask questions. You might need to get the host permission because they might have a set format, and that's fine. But if they're happy with it, ask questions. A normal dialogue is literally just two people having a chat, remember. It's not just one person talking. Always remember to give before you get, to share value first, whether it's entertainment, education, whatever it is, just give value and do that before you actually kind of get. You can always apply a subtle call to action. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out, but that's normally at the end. Don't do it during it. And please avoid over branding. Don't keep mentioning your book. Don't keep mentioning the course. Don't keep mentioning whatever it is you're selling. Remember, give value. This is all about giving value and how, if they like it, then they're more likely to buy it. But please don't sell. Don't be that person who does that. Also remember, provide takeaways. Give them stuff that they can do straight away. Frameworks, tips, all that kind of stuff is great. You don't want them to watch your podcast appearance or listen to it and then not do anything about it. You want them to start actioning what you've said. So please start doing it. So out of all those bits, there must be one or two bits that resonate with you. So please, if you are writing these down, great. If not, then please keep them mentally stored, because honestly, folks, if you can just focus on delivering value and not a sales pitch, then that will be the best thing for you and your business and your community and that podcast appearance. And guess what? You'll be invited back if you make a great impression and a great impression on their audiences. You're not going to get invited back if you just sell. Next point I want to make, the next topic I want to kind of put down and let you know about is the art of storytelling. Now, with the art of storytelling, this is really, really important. And as I said before, stories is the way that people have learnt and people have communicated for years and years and years. It's one of the most powerful tools that you can do. And when it's done right, stories captivate. They make your messages rememberable. And do you know what? They're fun to tell. Nobody wants a script, but telling the still, if no one wants just to hear a stupid, boring presentation, but people want to do that. So in fact, I'm going to try to do this section. I'm going to throw in a few stories in this section as well, just so you know that I'm doing it as well. First off, you need to start the story with a hook. So this grabs the listener's attention right from the start. Make it a compelling question, statement, intriguing scenario, and that all of that stuff can pull people in. It's always good to keep it relatable. So don't be afraid to share your own post experiences because these really help the listener bond with you. And after I've done this bit, I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I got into podcasting, just to bring it all together. I'll do that. You've got to make it personable. Don't be afraid to share your own experiences, and also set the scene as well. Paint a vivid picture about what it was like, how it all worked out as well. Describe the setting, the emotions, what you were doing. Really make the story come to life. You can always use the old conflict and resolution. So I had this problem and I sorted it out by doing this. Remember, just like any storytelling or any bits we've spoken about here, you've got to be concise. You can always cut once you've developed a story. It's good to keep practicing it, just so you can kind of just lose the odd word or two, and then you can just make it better every single time. You've got to use emotion as well. People buy emotion, and you can do that by adjusting your tone of voice, your pitch, the speed. You can just make it, you can show emotion through your body language as well. But please use emotion when you need to. If you don't need to use emotion, then just don't veer off topic. Keep it there and use a storytelling to teach it. So finish it off with a strong conclusion and really kind of make it worthwhile to them. So to put all that together, I'll tell you a story now about how I started with podcasting, because I haven't told it today, and this will illustrate it. Also, have different lengths of stories as well. So this is going to be about a minute or two, but there's a shorter version and a long version if I need to. So when I got into podcasting was really quite simple. One day on a Sunday afternoon, I basically started scrolling through Twitter, And I wanted to connect with different radio stations to see if I could become a guest on one of their shows. And effectively, what I did was message 10 or 12 of the local radio stations to see if they had any opportunities that I could take advantage of. Now, I did this with a bottle of wine. So you might have kind of you might think to yourself, do you know what? It's probably not going to work. But one station actually replied to my messages, and that one station then met up with me the following day. We spoke about the different things that I was doing that I could provide value to their station and provide value to their show, which was basically I was building a community in a local area, and I wanted to showcase the different people's experiences that I was kind of meeting on a day-to-day basis. Now, they said to me that they didn't think I'd make a good guest, which, to be fair, was a bit annoying and a bit heart-wrenching a little bit, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a guest on their show. But instead, they said they wanted me to have my own show on their radio station. There was two problems here. I had literally a week to do it, and the only bit of equipment I had was a mobile phone. Now, fast forward a week later, I launched my radio show with recording it on my phone, met up with people in the coffee shop and literally recorded it like that, edited it all on here. It wasn't even this one, it was an older model of this. But I just wanted to kind of showcase that the point that technology is not a barrier for podcasting. You can start a podcast with a mobile phone if you wanted to. Okay, quality might not be as great as it would do if you use mics, but you can make it work. And it's more important to have a firm idea, which is what I was pitching them without realizing it at the time, rather than to kind of just procrastinate and then focus on the actual equipment. Equipment is not really a massive difference. It's all about the idea, and you don't need technology really to kind of start it. You see, in 2 minutes, I crammed in the start. I did the conflict and resolution, start, beginning, middle, and end, all that kind of stuff. So that's how you can quickly tell a story all about doing that whilst getting your key points in. And the last point is you want to spread your word. You don't want your podcast appearance to be the best kept secret. You want to share it. You want to shout about it. You want to connect with people who have actually watched and listened to the show as well. And if it's audio and video, great. You can share both of them to different places as well. So some of the key points that I thought about when I created this topic is kind of the following bits in it. Let me just quickly get that. I haven't got my notes for that. That's good preparation. But basically, you want to share it. Now, you want to share it to 3 different key places. You want to share it with your inner circle, which is the people who you speak to all the time. Send them a message saying, hey, I've got this podcast appearance that I've just been on. Would you mind sharing the details there? And this is all about sharing it after it's been released. There's loads of stuff you can do beforehand, but I haven't got enough time to talk about that as well. So I'm just going to focus on sharing it after a podcast has been released. So once a podcast is released, you've got the links to it. It could have the video on YouTube. It could have the audio on different places. You want to share those with your inner circle so they can start promoting it as well. Then share it on your social media. Make it easy for people to listen to the show. So include links to places like YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then also include at that point maybe a graphic that the host has sent through, which is basically to show the cover art for the episode. If you haven't got those details from the hosts, contact the hosts and try to get them, because they're really important for your marketing assets. Then you can maybe create a blog around it. You can then start putting all of these onto a one-pager on your website. Send it out to your newsletter on LinkedIn or on your email, wherever it is. Share it out to different places. If it's big enough, write a press release and send it to the local rag. It's about getting your message out to those 3 places: your inner circle, your social media network or your networking people, and then finally the outer circle, which is where the PR comes in. And then also you can then start connecting with different people. And honestly, folks, being a podcast guest is a great networking opportunity. For every person who comments on the host's post that's releasing the show, which you can also share, by the way, You can also connect with each of those people. You can say thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. You can maybe have a dialogue with the host to say if you've got any questions after listening to it. I can do a live, or I can talk about it in the comments. It's really about, again, still giving value, but also about spreading the word. And you're using the podcast appearance threefold. You're using it as a tool to give you content. You're giving a tool to give people value. And also you're using it as a tool to connect with people. If you think of those three bits when you're spreading the word, you're not going to be far wrong. Everyone's got their own different ways of doing it. But what you don't want to do, what you can't do, is nothing. You can't do nothing after an episode. The host and their team, if they've got a team, have spent their time, the energy, and their money producing the episode for that show. It's up to you as a guest to make the most of it for them and you. So share it, share the messages, connect with their community, and really focus on what's next. Always ask yourself the question: what's next for me with this podcast? Is it a future collaboration with a host? Could you get them as a guest on a live that you do for your audience, for instance? Could they join you in a collaboration or something like that? Is it the case that actually, once you've kind of spoken to them in the comments and spoken to the audience, you're part of their community, so you're following stuff? You've got to really figure out what's next for you and that podcast, but always have that open mind. And if you've given value at every stage and not sold, the host is probably going to think to themselves, this guy's a good egg. I'm going to get him back in. Or actually, I need someone to talk about this topic, and this guy's going to be really good. And if someone says, why that person? Well, he came onto my podcast, he gave some really good insights, and he shared it afterwards, and he connected with my community and followed them up with good kind of insightful stuff. You can see how it all fits in. But only if you do it in the right kind of way. If you go in straight sell, it won't work. It won't work at all. So let's just quickly recap all of this, just so you've kind of got it summed up. You want to start creating a perfect pitch, which is not generic, which is specific for that particular podcast. And that podcast you would have also listened to and researched, by the way. Then you'd come up, once you've been accepted onto the podcast, you're going to come up with your one-page success plan, which is going to have all the details on there for you to kind of refer to before, during, and then after the actual kind of show as well. You're then going to be focused on delivering value, not a sales pitch, all the way through the actual interview and then afterwards as well. You're going to be inserting stories into this as well, so people can understand it. Remember, beginning, middle, end, and also give value during it as well. Use a conflict and resolution. That's always a good tool as well. And once it's out there, spread the word. Use it as a three-way tool to give you content, to make you an authority in your field, and to connect with different people as well, and to give value as well. It's massively important to give value. How was that, folks? That was just under 30 minutes covering those 5 different topics about becoming a podcast guest, becoming a standout podcast guest. Now, if you want to, and this is only if you want to, I want you now to write down 5 things that you're going to start doing, because I don't want you just to watch this. And if you spend your time watching this, thank you. And if you watch, especially if you watched it live, if you watch it on a replay, thank you again as well for watching it on the replay. But I want you to write down 5 things that you can start doing. I'd start doing today, because there's no point in you planning to do something, but do 5 things that you want to do. Now, those 5 things could be as simple as I want to start putting myself out there as a podcast guest to people. It could be, okay, I want to start, I've got a podcast interview coming up. I'm going to create 2 key stories that I want to share with them. It could be the fact that actually I need a checklist just to help me with my lives, because that might work. It could be the case that actually I want to start, been on podcast, but I haven't marketed it. I'm now going to share it on social media. Start making those bits down. Now, just to let you know, obviously, this is all part of this course, which is the art of being a standout guest. Now, it will be remiss of me not to not to actually kind of showcase that. And if you did want to actually want to be part of this course, then you can do by all means. It's probably easier to go to Udemy and instead to go from there, because you can get a massive discount. And at the moment, the art of being a standout guest on Udemy is $35.99. Now on my website it's $44.99, thanks to dynamic pricing, but I believe you can get a new learner offer, which means that you might be able to get it for $15.99. And I say that because on my top of my computer here it says that. So here's the link. Here's the link for the main course. I'm just going to put it in there. You know, ultimately, the whole point of this is for me to give as much value. So I've given half hour of my time to give you all those tips. If you do want to find out more, go from there. Now, for the next 20 minutes or so, if you have any questions about being a guest on a podcast, please put them below. Let me know if you've got any questions, because I would love to hear or any experiences that you've been of podcasts. Now, if people haven't got any questions, then that's absolutely fine. But I'm going to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just kind of giving you a flavor of the most common questions I get asked about being a guest on a podcast. And if there's any questions that have come in between now and then, I'll answer them. If not, I'll close this live off. So the most common question I get asked is, there's 3 most common questions I get asked. Number 1, how do you get on podcasts? Which is one that I was going to cover in this, but I fought against it because I want to focus on the giving value side of it more than anything else. But the main common question is, how do I get onto podcasts? How do I choose the right podcasts? Which again is another topic on there. How do I kind of connect with other people, which I've mentioned in here briefly. And then it's about the tech as well, which I don't believe is a massive thing. I think tech is a barrier that most people put upon themselves. But how do you get onto the right podcasts? Simply, you ask the host that if you can come onto their podcast. Now, there's going to be a couple of different ways you can do this. And to identify the right podcast to start off with, which is probably the most, there you go, which is probably the most easiest one to kind of do. Let's just move that there. The most easiest way of getting on podcast is to ask. Now, if you want to turn its head onto the question on its head, and how can you approach a podcast to get invited? Basically, this is a nice, straightforward answer. You've got to first of all make sure that that podcast is suitable for your key messages, and those key messages that you've got would work for their audience. There's no point just going onto a Bob Standard podcast if your message isn't going to resonate with their audience. It's not going to work whatsoever. So first of all, you got to identify which podcasts work for you. Now, it might not be an obvious fit, but it's all about those key messages. And then it's about creating that perfect pitch. Now, sometimes it's about just sending them a message and saying, and this message could be on social media, saying, I've got a great, I would love to talk about this key topic or these 3 key topics with you on your podcast. If there's an opportunity coming up, please let me know. It could be as simple as that. It could be the fact that you might need to fill out a form on their website. It could be then actually a little video message works really, really well for that person. You've got to pitch it to the host. And if they're really good on video, doing a quick video message would probably work. If they're a bit more old school, an email would work. You've got to pitch it from there. But it's all about, as I said before, creating that pitch and giving them a good reason for why you should be on their show and making it easy for them. It is. But making that first step, it could just be literally a message on socials. That could be the easiest way to do it. But you've got to make sure you go onto the right podcasts. Now, the easiest way to start this process is, just like anything, you need to prepare and you need to practice your key messages and your podcasting skills. They don't happen overnight. By repeating your key messages, you do get more fluid and then you do get more practiced and more articulate at them. So you might go on a few podcasts before your main podcast interview. But if so, that's fine. just put a message on social media to say, I'm looking to speak on podcasts that talk about this, and this. Does anybody know of any podcasts that I can go on to, or any podcast hosts that might be worth connecting with? If you do that on somewhere like LinkedIn, that's a really useful tool to be able to do it. You could also put yourself onto websites like matchmaker.fm. Now, matchmaker.fm is a really simple site that matches up podcasts with podcast guests. I'm going to pop down the information on here, just so you've got them. But it's a nice, straightforward way of matching, and as their tagline, connecting podcasters with guests. Now, there's a free version. There's also a free version, and there's also a non-free version as well. So you need to kind of pick that out. But the best way to do it is, like I said, identify which podcasts you want to go on to, create a pitch for them, and then go from there. You need to put yourself out there. All of this isn't going to come overnight, and this does involve hard work. This isn't a silver bullet to being a guest on a podcast, because there's no silver bullet. All of these take time. Now, and the other way that you can get approached, you can be invited onto a podcast, is by showing you are the authority in your field. And that's about making sure that your social stuff, your social stuff and your social proofing is really spot on. It's about showing people you can talk about different topics. It's about showing people and sharing previous examples of them, you doing it, about you speaking on stage, you being on the podcast. It's about sharing with them through blogs and articles that you know your stuff. Once they build that trust in you, they're going to invite you if they need a speaker on that particular one. But you need to build that. This all takes time. You need to build those assets. You need to have those experiences on the stage. That's why sharing previous podcast experiences are really good, because it shows that people know that you've been on that show. Hope that answers your question. If there's any more questions, please let me know. But that is the most common question that I have about being a guest. One thing I would say is good to work out your key messages beforehand, and make sure you've got those key messages worked out, which are suitable for those particular shows that you're going on. You could go on to 10 different podcasts and share the completely different stuff, because it's all about that podcast and not about your key messages. But you need to be flexible enough and be confident in your key messages that you can amend to the podcast format. The other thing I would mention about key messages is practice them beforehand. The more you practice, as I said before, I think at previous points, the more fluid you get. The ums and the ahs gets taken out because you don't have to have that thinking room. And you know which words to remove, because frankly, you don't need them. So the more times you say something, the easier it gets. And that's why being a guest on a podcast is also a great experience for being a public speaker as well. And if you're a public speaker, you can hone your key messages through podcasting as well. All of this stuff I also cover in my LinkedIn group, by the way. And if you haven't already signed up for it, please join us on our free LinkedIn newsletter. So basically, we've got a newsletter which goes on. Yeah, we've got a newsletter on LinkedIn. Every day I send out a different podcasting idea, and I'm going to put the link to it into the chat right now. I would love to see you on there, because I covered that topic about public speaking skills and podcasting, I think today or yesterday, one of the two. And I've covered a lot of these topics in there as well. So connect. Here's our free LinkedIn newsletter. There you go. So that's in there. There's linked. There you go. I've spelled that right now, I believe. If not, I'm sure someone will correct me. Oh well. It's gone out. It's gone out. That's fine. But the main thing is don't be afraid of asking. Don't be afraid of asking. And if you've liked this, you will find more every month. I do a different free webinar, or workshop like this. You can find all of these on our website. which I'm just going to put a link to there. The next one is going to be, so we've got the meetup. We've got every month we meet up and have a chat about podcasting on the last Wednesday of each month. So that's on Wednesday, 26th. Next one is going to be how to engage with podcasts. So that's the 5 ways you can engage with podcasts. That's on April the 9th. Then we're back around to do another different 5 bits on Wednesday, the 14th of May. All the events here. There you go. Okay, and I've got all the links there as well. There is another just to let you know, in the podcasting toolkit as well. There is also a podcast launch guide as well, and also the social meetups. But the main thing is check it out all on the website there. But in the meantime, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Hope that's been useful. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way that you can get in touch with us. Send us a message on there. Ask us any questions you have on there as well. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. And please keep the comments flowing. And for all the rest of you watching out there on the ether, take care, my friends. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next time for the next monthly workshop in March. See you later. No. We're in March now. I'll see you for the next monthly workshop in April. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.